Story time about how I ghosted my boyfriend of 5 years. I know that sounds so bad, but he was a thief, a liar, and a cheater. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Like I said, my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. We met in college and were basically inseparable for the first 2 years. On our 3rd year of dating, I started working as a personal assistant for a big celebrity in LA. This meant I had to move to LA. You see, we lived in Texas at the time. Well, things got really bad after I moved. He wouldn't take my phone calls, he would totally ignore my text messages, and he would go out all the time. For the first few months, I tried to keep the peace so I wouldn't say anything, but eventually it got to the point where we wouldn't speak for an entire week. Luckily, my best friend still lived in Texas, so I had her follow him around for 2 days. And you'll never guess what she found. Shout out to my bestie. She showed up to his apartment early in the morning and waited for him to go to work, which he did. When he was done with work, she went back to his job to follow him back home. This is when she told me that he actually went to some girl's house. He didn't end up going home at all that day. This man actually spent the night at some girl's house. The whole time I was trying to call him and text him, and he did not take my phone calls. My best friend even took pictures of his car in this girl's driveway. Since I had this girl's address, I looked her up on the internet. I even found out her phone number because I paid some service online. And of course, I found her Instagram account. She had been posting on her story about hanging out with some guy. But the thing is, she didn't show the guy's face. She only showed his hand. Guess what? I recognized his hand in the picture because it has a tattoo on his pinky. So of course, I took screenshots. Later that day, my best friend followed him to a bar. At this bar, he met up with another girl. Unfortunately, I didn't have any information about this girl. I just knew that she drove a green car. My best friend followed him again the following day. He went to the beach, ran some errands, and then met up with another girl. Yes, we have 3 girls in 2 days. This girl was different because this girl was a friend of mine when I lived in Texas. And I knew she always had a crush on him, but she could never admit it. They went out to dinner and then back to her place. And again, my best friend sent me pictures of everything, so I had all the receipts. Side note, I think of my best friend spying on him and it makes me laugh. I hope you can all say you have best friends that are like that. So here's what I did. I got on the first flight back to Texas and did not tell my boyfriend that I was showing up at his apartment the following day. But guess what I find in his bed? Part 2 is up. Story time about how I ghosted my boyfriend of 5 years. I show up to my boyfriend's apartment to catch him in the act, and you'll never guess what I found in his bed. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. My lying, cheating boyfriend had given me a key to his apartment. So I unlock the apartment and make my way towards his bedroom, really quietly. When I walk into his bedroom, I find him curled up in his bed with another girl. He's holding her in his arms, totally fast asleep. The worst part is, I recognize the girl that was with him. It was one of the girls who I used to be friends with in Texas. I walked backwards and closed the door behind me. That's when I just started to cry. I couldn't believe that he had done this to me. While I was working my butt off in LA trying to make a future for us, he was in Texas dating 3 women at once. No wonder he never picked up my phone calls or even texted me back. So here's what I did. I had printed out all the receipts I had, all the pictures of him hanging out with other girls that my best friend took while she was spying on him. I laid out all the pictures on his kitchen counter, and I left him a letter too. I told him in the letter that I could never forgive him and for him to never contact me again. Oh yeah, and that I wanted him to pay me back the $3,000 he owed me. You see, when we first started dating, he needed a loan for his car. I helped him out and gave him $3,000, which he promised to pay me. Obviously, we dated for 5 years and I never saw any of that money. So aside from him being a cheater and a liar, he was a thief. I left the note and the cards and left his apartment. I went to my parents' house and stayed with him for the weekend. Of course, my boyfriend, ex, showed up to my parents' house and begged to talk to me. My father told him to leave me alone and to never speak to me again. My dad told him that when he was ready to pay him the money. That made me laugh. I was totally crushed. I blocked him on everything, even through email. Of course, he got on someone else's phone and tried to contact me that way, but I never replied. He sends me emails every now and then and promises to pay me the money back. A few days ago, he sent me a picture of an engagement ring. He keeps telling me that I'm the best thing that he's ever had, that he's sorry and blah, blah, blah. I kind of want to reply to him, but I know that that's a bad idea, right? Or should I just talk to him and see what he has to say? What do you guys think? Story time about how my ex broke into my apartment and trashed my entire apartment and ruined every single thing that I owned. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. I'm not gonna lie, my relationship with my ex is terribly toxic. We actually met each other on a dating app I know. He was absolutely charming on the first date. Second date, not so much. And third date, he was absolutely awful. But I just started falling in love with him, like literally from the moment I met him. I had it in my head that I was gonna make him a good boyfriend. Like, me? I seriously, honestly thought that he would change and just become a better guy. He quickly wanted to be exclusive, but did not want to call me his girlfriend. Oh, and he would get jealous about every little single thing. If I wanted to go out with friends, he would get upset. If I didn't answer my phone or text him right away, he would get upset. Mind you, this whole time, he doesn't want to call me his girlfriend. I work as a stylist, but I also model on the side just for some money. Well, he hated this. A week into dating or whatever we were, he told me that I needed to quit modeling. If I didn't quit modeling, that meant that I was for the streets. Because, you know, all models are for the streets. Like the idiot I am, I started passing up on jobs. I even passed up on a Sephora campaign. My modeling agency was really upset. But in my mind, I thought, if I do what he wants, he'll be a good boyfriend. And maybe we can call each other boyfriend and girlfriend. My mom kept insisting that she wanted to meet him, but he said no. Now, when he told me that he didn't want to meet my mom, trust me, I put my foot down. I told him there was absolutely no way I could be in a relationship with anybody who did not want to meet my family. He told me that I was taking things way too seriously. That's when I threw it in his face that he acts like a jealous boyfriend but still doesn't want to call me his girlfriend. So he explained to me that any girl he talks to has to be only for him. And even if he's not dating you, you still have to be only for him. Then he told me that he was dating 2 other girls. I had a suspicion, but I never thought he would actually admit it to me. I told him that we needed a break and that I didn't want to see him for a few weeks. This made him insanely jealous. He told me that I was a liar and that I was probably hooking up with someone else the whole time I was with him. And yes, I did try to convince him that I wasn't, but he was not having it. I just moved into my new apartment, which I absolutely love. Spent over $3,000 decorating it. I even got CB2 furniture. I made the mistake of giving him a key a few weeks ago. One day I come home from a modeling job and my apartment is completely trashed. Part 2 is up. I walk into my apartment to find it trashed. At first I thought I had been robbed, but that's when it hit me. It was my ex. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. The walls in my apartment were smeared with chocolate. There was literally broken glass in the entryway, so I could have stepped in glass. All the mirrors were shattered and broken. My television was on the floor, completely smashed, and there was a hammer right next to my TV. This man took a hammer and smashed my television. He did the same thing to my expensive Vitamix blender. All of my makeup was in the toilet. And yes, there was poo in the toilet too. The sink was full of kitchen condiments where he put all of my expensive perfumes. The bathroom mirror was also smashed. My expensive ass CB2 couch was full of mustard and honey. All of my couch cushions had olive oil on them. I mean, the list goes on and on. I pulled out my phone and started taking picture and video. I called the police and my parents came right away. Of course, I called my ex and told him that I knew it was him and he denied everything. He said, and I quote, "You're crazy," and then hung up. The cop that came to my apartment was super rude. He said that I must have done something really bad in order to deserve this kind of punishment. I filed a police report and they told me that I could sue him. So far, he does not want to pay a single dime. He then admitted to me through text messages that he got the idea from a TikTok video, and that some other guy had done this to his ex. So far, I spent $500 just in cleaning services to clean my apartment. I'm living back with my parents. Luckily, a judge made him pay me $5,000. Still not enough. He's been calling me and begging me to get back with him. What do I freaking do? Story time about how I'm still in love with my toxic ex. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is really complicated, but please hear me out before you start judging me in the comments. Ex and I dated for exactly 1 year. When we first met, he was super charming, cute. I mean, he was like the perfect boyfriend. My family loved him, but gradually he started changing. The more serious we got about the relationship, the worse he became. For example, at the beginning of our relationship, we always used to hang out with our friends. And sometimes I would hang out with my own friends on my own. But 2 months into the relationship, he began guilting me. He would tell me that I would rather hang out with my friends, which wasn't even true. And then I would end up staying home and then he would go out with his friends. He would also tell my parents sometimes that I needed to be taught lessons, like how to respect men and stuff. My parents detested him. One time he came over for Thanksgiving and basically told me that I needed to go change my clothes. He even said that I looked like a whore in front of my cousin. After that, my cousin really hated him and began doing her own research. She found that he was liking girls' pictures on Instagram and that he was leaving dirty comments on their pictures. Once she found all this information, she told me and I confronted him. He told me that he had every right to comment on anyone's pictures because it was just the internet and it wasn't real life. I kind of had to accept what he said because I didn't want any more problems. I asked my cousin to stop searching stuff, but she just didn't let up. Almost every single week, she would send me screenshots of things that he'd comment on girls' pictures. Finally, I told my boyfriend that my cousin had found all this out, and he basically forced me to cut her out of my life. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would I stay with him? But when things were good, they were really good. He was super loving, affectionate. He always wanted to be with me and he always prioritized going on dates and having fun. He would always surprise me with fun things. One time he planned this beautiful picnic and we even stayed in the park and spent the night there. But then he would manage to ruin everything by becoming really jealous and controlling. My dream job was to work in marketing, and I just happened to land this internship at a really popular fashion magazine. When I told him I got the job, he acted really strange. He didn't even congratulate me. A few hours later, he told me that I was trying too hard and that he didn't want a girlfriend that was going to be at work all the time. He also asked me how much I was going to be getting paid because he wanted to make sure it was less than what he earned. So in other words, he was jealous and envious at the same time. Then he insisted that I work around his schedule, so I could only work the days that he was working. Then he told me that if I wasn't spending enough time with him because of my new job, he would break up with me. I took that as the last straw. It was my dream job, but he was making everything terrible. While my entire family was so happy for me, I was crying in bed at night. The next morning, I woke up and texted him and told him that I didn't want to see him. He ran straight to my house. We got in his car to talk, and I proceeded to tell him everything I thought.